One of the most anticipated weekends in recent memory for Madison area arts lovers is finally here. Good morning, I'm Brennan Nardi filling in for Neil Heinen. Back in May of 2009, groundbreaking was begun on an ambitious expansion of the Chazen Museum of Art. The expansion, which actually amounted to a new building adjacent to the current one, doubles the size of the museum and doubles the museum's gallery space. The new and improved Chazen Museum of Art is, as of this weekend, open to the public. Here to talk about it is the museum's director, Russell Panchenko. Also joining me today is my colleague at Madison Magazine, Associate Editor Katie Vaughn. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Russell, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
A lot going on this week. I want to start, actually, with the history. Can you kind of take us back to 1970 and how the LVM Art Center began?
That's true. It was the LVM Art Center back in those days, and it opened, and it was called an art center because it had three separate entities in the building. It not only had the University of Wisconsin Museum of Art, also had the Kohler Art Library and the Department of Art History. And these three entities would have functioned as a visual arts study center for the university and the community. Now, when the museum opened back then, the museum only had about 1,500 works of art. So if you figure that we exhibit somewhere between 800 and 1,000 works of art in our galleries at any one time, most of what we had was on view. You know, to sort of follow up to the present day, the collection numbers over 20,000 works of art. So it's been tremendous growth through the generosity of people who either donated money for art purchase funds or people who've donated art collections. And so that's what necessitated the expansion of the building, is this tremendous growth in the collection, and recognizing that our obligation is to make that art available. The mission of our museum and any museum is to provide direct access to original works of art. So if it's sitting in storage, or if we're just passing out pictures or showing it to you on the internet, we're not doing our job.
So we were the LVM Museum of Art until 2005. Now
That's
we're
right.
the Chazen. Can you talk about that name change and what that meant and why?
Sure. Well, you know, we changed because we had a feasibility study done in the late 90s. And the feasibility study concluded that the only way we could build an expansion was if somebody came forward with a major gift that amounted to at least half of what was then the projected cost of the expansion itself. And we did a lot of discussion with a number of people, and the Chazen stepped forward and initially gave us $20 million, which was a little more than the half. But part of that was, can we name the museum after that? And we looked at that very carefully, and there were a couple of things we realized. That Conrad Elvium was, first of all, a scientist. He was not an artist. He was not particularly interested in the arts. But there was the tradition at the University of Wisconsin to name buildings after significant faculty members or administrators. And when Conrad Elvium died, they wanted to dedicate a building in his honor. And the only building really that he'd given permission to build on the campus was the Future Arts Center. And he died in, was it 62, and the building doesn't open until 8 years later. And I will say that the building will always be known as the Conrad A. Elvium building. So we haven't renamed the building, we've renamed the museum, but the building as intended keeps its name. In fact, the sign will go up this coming week. We were hoping to put it up last week just in time for the opening. Unfortunately, with all the rain, the ground was too wet.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about the Chazens, about their history of art collecting and their connection to the city and the university?
Well, they both went to the University of Wisconsin, and they met here, and that puts a warm spot in anybody's heart, as you can well imagine. And they then went on, and he went on into the clothing business for many years. And when he was around 40 years old, he tells the story that he got tired of working for somebody else and earning money for somebody else, and he said to his wife, he said, "What do you think? Shall I take a chance and go into business for myself?" And at 40, with a couple of kids going to college, this was financially, as you can imagine, a pretty risky business. But he had stayed friends with his former roommate here at the UW Wisconsin, and his former roommate had just married Liz Claiborne, and Liz Claiborne was a designer, but Liz Claiborne, the industry, did not exist yet, and the three of them got together and came up with the idea of a new design, company where she would design and they would produce clothes of a particular kind for the working woman primarily, so you can mix and match tops and bottoms as opposed to just having a dress. And they lacked somebody, he said, for production. They advertised in the newspaper, and they did find somebody that way. So the four of them each put up $250,000 in capital, total $1 million, and started Liz Claiborne. And that was in 1975.
A lot of money to collect art over the years.
Well, as he likes to say, he says, we knew we'd do well, but we had no idea how well. But to be, something I admire about them very much, all their all their money is going back into the arts, into education. They support Columbia University, they support the Metropolitan Opera, they support this museum and one other museum, the Museum of Art and Design in New York on Columbus Circle. They're really believers in you've got to make the world a better place than when you found it, when you came into it. And so, they're very modest in many ways. I've been both their homes, and nothing's over the top. Everything's of decent quality, but nothing is ostentatious or showing off wealth. Now, their interest in art, in large measure, begins when they were here in Wisconsin, because one of the things that was going on was Harvey Littleton producing glass. And in fact, the Studio Glass movement, which celebrates its 50th anniversary in 2012, was founded in large measure here and at the Toledo Museum. But Harvey was a promoter of the arts, and so, really chatted up every chance he got. And so people were exposed to him more than they might be to other artists on campus, and so they took an interest in art. And glass art was still modestly priced in those days, so they began to collect glass. And they still are major glass collectors, to this day. And eventually then they expanded to paintings, sculpture, and their collection is very, very significant. If you look at the middle of the 20th century and the second half of the 20th century, just about any major name that you can think of is represented there. I think of Roy Lichtenstein, for example. Robert Motherwell, one of the famous Spanish elegy series is there. Alex Katz, these are iconic names and images of that time.
Great. Well, when we come back, we're going to look more at the expansion, talk more about the role of the Chazen at the university and in the community. We'll be right back. Great, we're back here with Russell Panchenko, my colleague at Madison Magazine, Katie Vaughn, talking about the grand opening of the Chazen Museum of Art. Let's hear it. Let's talk about the expansion itself. Give us some details. What are we going to see?
Well, it's a wonderful new building, and it's about the same size as the current building. The two were meant to complement one another. And I was about to say unfortunately, but it turned out to be a very happy circumstance that we had to build a second building on the other side of what is now the East Campus Mall and connect the two by a bridge. And there was always a lot of worry, well, what will this bridge be like? Will it work? But I'm happy to say that if you look at the building from University Avenue, it looks like one large horizontal facade. It looks like a single building and a single institution.
It's absolutely beautiful. Talk about the outdoor courtyard.
Oh, the courtyard between the two buildings becomes a very active space, and we have a lot of glass in this building, so the courtyard faces right onto a lobby, and there's a glass wall to the lobby that's 2 stories high, so you can see in and out throughout the place, and that'll be used for a lot of public activities. And the two buildings, by the way, are connected on the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor in the existing building has always been gallery space. The entire 3rd floor in the new building is gallery space, and the bridge is a full gallery. So it's all dedicated to the permanent collection. And people will be surprised. You can walk across that bridge from building to building and not even realize that you're doing so.
Great. Well, we have some images that we're going to have a look at. There's a 160-seat auditorium that's brand new.
It is, yes.
In addition to an art studio for classes of all kinds. And that's new as well.
That's new as well. Both are brand new, in a sense, are new programs. Of course, with the auditorium, we're going to have lectures and symposia and things of that nature, as you would expect, but it's also equipped to show film. Not only the what you would expect, digital images, DVDs and 16 millimeter, but 35 millimeter as well. And we will be working with Cinematheque on campus and other groups to offer a film program as the years go on. The Art Studio Classroom is to provide, I would say, young teens an insight about the making of art. You know, when you take kids on a tour right now, you talk about the biography of the artist, the cultural history of the art, and you never really get into this was actually made. You could try to make it, and it's not easy. You know, this is a high achievement. So now we have a space where we can take them, show them how something was either drawn or how clay was moved, give them a chance to try it. So it's not a formal educational program, but just every time say art is something that's made by someone.
Now you have school children and coming in and out of the Chazen all the time. Talk a little bit about the role of the Chazen in the community outside the university.
Well, for us, the community role is terribly important, and in fact, not just for the museum, but the university very much is committed to public outreach, and they see the museum as a major mechanism for that outreach. And in fact, our openings, if you may notice, we're kind of divided up this time. Instead of having one big grand opening, you know, last Thursday we opened to students in the university community. Yesterday afternoon, and again this afternoon, we're doing community open houses, and it's specifically for the community. In fact, yesterday, the mayor and the chancellor together opened the doors to the community. We're trying to get the message across. This is not only a university resource, this is very much a community resource, and the community is very welcome. So that's why the community open houses for these 2 days. And of course, there'll be programs and tours. You know, you mentioned the school children. We have a wonderful group of volunteer docents, 105 now. We expanded from about 60 in preparation for the opening. You know, people just stepped up to the plate. That's marvelous to see the enthusiasm. And they get training. They're, you know, both in taking art history courses, meeting artists and curators. So they're passing on information to the people coming through on these tours that's accurate and meaningful. And I will like to point out that the tours are all free. You know, any group, whether it's a school group, community group, Boy Scouts, senior citizens, all you have to do is call the curator of education and say, we'd like to come on such and such a date. We have so many people. This is the tour we'd like. And
well, let's take a virtual tour here. I think we've got some images here that we want to show. We want to show the audience.
Well, interestingly enough, this is looking up from the lobby, from the grand staircase. There's a window that looks onto the second floor Garfield galleries, which are for showing rotating exhibitions for works on paper. I will point out that most of the images that we handed to you were indoor images as opposed to outdoor images, because right up until last Wednesday, you know, they were still working on the landscaping, and there was no way of getting a picture of the building without the porta potties and the dumpsters and things of that nature.
And this next one is one of the gallery spaces?
This is actually the mezzanine. This is the central area. When you come up the grand staircase to the third floor, where most of the art is, that opens up down, and you can look down into the lobby area. And the yellow piece that you're looking is an architect's little piece of fantasy, a yellow glass bridge that he put in.
This one's remarkable to me. You know, when you think about playing jacks, but it's something completely different.
Well, that's a wonderful work of art. You know, it's yes, it is. You know, your reference to jacks is right on. You know, he took his inspiration from, you know, the Jackson balls we all played with as kids. However, in this case, he's increased its size dramatically, and also, if you notice, one end of it is very sharp and very pointy. In fact, it's very ominous looking. And also, the piece is made out of carbon fibers. I'm sorry, which is exactly what you make missiles out of. So there's juxtapositioning of something that's very innocent and something that's very dangerous.
Asian gallery?
Oh, yes. We had an Asian gallery in the Alveum building, but that was only 1,000 square feet. And our Asian collections have grown, so we've given a new gallery of about 1,600 square feet, and it's divided into almost 3 rows, one for Chinese art, one for Japanese art, and one with Southeast Asian. These are 3 areas that we're strong
in. This one, this is very interesting, this sculpture right in front to the right. It feels like it's in motion.
Yes, it's pop art. It's Klaus Oldenburg. We've all seen Klaus Oldenburg's, these everyday objects that are converted into these wonderful overscaled sculptures. And that's one of the erasers, typewriter. In fact, somebody said to me the other day, most of the kids coming to school here won't know what that is. It's a typewriter eraser. They will be lucky if they know what typewriters are. But it's an eraser and it's sort of flying. The upper things are flying with it. Oh, this is in the lobby. We have a lot of glass, as I mentioned earlier, but there are times that you might want to have an event in the lobby that's a little more private. And we commissioned an artist by the name of Petra Blaze from Amsterdam, who specializes in curtains for public spaces, to design a unique piece of art that would serve as a curtain. So it's both a work of art and a curtain.
This one, I love the idea that you can come sit down and join the party, per se.
Yes, we thought very much of putting in a couple of spaces where people can just sit down. I really worry when I hear people come into a museum, they just whisper, oh, it's not a church. Of course, you don't want to disturb everyone else, but relax and enjoy, find what you enjoy. And this little space, actually this corresponds, to the big window. If people look at it from University Avenue, you see that large horizontal stone face and there's a piece of glass. Well, that's the inside. So you can sit and look out. The wonderful, many people may know that we have Japanese prints, a very large selection. And I was looking at auction for a Japanese screen last spring, and in that auction there was a wonderful Japanese suit of armor, and I thought, wouldn't that be great to complement our warrior prints? Asked one of our alumni, because I didn't have the money, would you buy this for us? And by golly, he did, and there it is.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Oh, we're looking up from the lower area, and there's the yellow bridge once more. Also, you might note just to the left, the ceiling. I do urge people when they come to visit the museum to make sure they not only look at the walls and the art, but they look up the ceiling in the lobby, and you're seeing a small section. And also the underside of the bridge has a beautiful design to it. Also, you'll see in the various galleries these light monitors, if you look at the outside of the building, you see these cubes clad in copper, and people ask me, what are those? Each one of those contains one of these light monitors. So you see it from the outside, and make sure you look up and see it. It's beautifully made. Findorf did an extraordinary job with that.
Well, Russell, you were talking earlier about the new museum's role in the community at large. Could you tell us a little bit about what it'll mean for the university, particularly departments like art history?
Well, the collection is much larger, and the collection has grown very significantly. And it's that growth has allowed us to put together a much more coherent art historical display. So you'll see, if you go into the existing building, as always, you would come up the grand staircase, and from Gallery 1, then going clockwise, you go ancient art, 1400, 1600, 1600 to 1800, to 19th century gallery, and then Gallery 7 starts transition between 19th century and the 20th, and then as you get to the bridge and across, you're getting into modernism, especially sculpture, 20th century sculpture, linked up with drawings by some of the same sculptors, so that you get an insight into the creative process. We saw the eraser earlier on. Well, on the wall just behind the eraser, there were two drawings of the eraser where the artist was working out. You said it looks like it's moving. Well, how do you get to making it look like it's moving? So you have drawings that give you a sense of what he was exploring before he got there. So and then we have an African art gallery that we've never had before, because we've grown a collection in the past 15 years. I mentioned the Asian gallery, which is almost twice the size of the earlier one. And then we've created a new gallery called Midwestern Surrealism, or Magic Realism. Neither word is quite accurate, but it has Wisconsin artists, John Wilde, Aaron Borad.
I want to talk a little bit more about that. We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the inaugural exhibitions and the open house happening today.
That's true.
Well, welcome back to For the Record with Russell Panchenko of the Chazen Museum of Art. Here we have the information about the community open house going on today, noon to 5, so you can head on out right after this.
And I would like to point out that Mount Zion Choir is performing from 2:30 to 3. So that's an added treat.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, Russell, you told me, I think a couple of weeks ago, that visitors to the new museum will get to see items that about 70-80% of which they've never seen before. Could you take us through what are you most excited about? Give us sort of your take on what are the can't miss pieces.
Well, that's somewhat like saying, who's your favorite child?
Yes.
So it's very tough because, there's things that I like anywhere. And one of the things that I do feel quite strongly about that people shouldn't think that there's certain things that they must see or must like. Sure. I'm very much a proponent. Come in and find things that you can personally relate to. The way you go to a concert, you don't have to be a musicologist. You may like a piece of music, whether it's the best piece of music or not. Same with art. Now, that said, one of the galleries that intrigues me very much is a new gallery, is the 21st Century International. At least that's what I'm calling it. And it reflects what I think is happening in the art world today, and it also reflects how we've been collecting art over time. Going back 20 years, I'd go to New York and I'd go from gallery to gallery, and artists were searching what is that main line of development. Now you go to Tribeca, and one gallery is Chinese art, the next has American art, the next has art from Africa. So there's no such thing. We're much more accepting. I guess global is a term, although I hesitate to use it, to see art as it's produced around the world, and that's how we've been acquiring. So in this gallery, I've got a piece by Ella Natsui, who's from Nigeria. I've got a piece by a Japanese artist that we just acquired, whose name I can't pronounce, but it's a beautiful contemporary Japanese mythical piece. A piece by a contemporary Chinese artist, Xu Bing, a glass piece by Stefan Dahm, that Cabinet of Curiosity. Actually, a piece that intrigues people who've been coming through the last couple of days is by Luc Jéram. It's a glass sculpture, and it's a portrait of an E. coli virus. And, it's beautiful, though. Wow. You wouldn't imagine. In fact, everybody says, how can something so beautiful be so lethal? I said, well, it's in glass, and it's way oversized. It can't get into you.
So just to let folks know, we do have 3 inaugural exhibitions, including one from the Chazen family, which should be very exciting.
Well, the Chazen family, who have loaned us 26 of their key paintings by very important 20th century artists. They'll be here for 6 months. Ultimately, the paintings will be coming to us, but they live with the paintings in their house. And I said, you've denuded our house, but okay, it's in a good cause.
So will it include the Harvey Littleton studio art class?
No, it won't, because what we're doing with Harvey Littleton is, because 212, as I mentioned earlier, is the 50th anniversary of Studio Glass movement, we're holding back the glass. We're going to do a special Studio Glass exhibition opening next April. So this is only paintings and 2 pieces of sculpture, but it has pieces by Roy Lichtenstein, Alex Katz, Robert Motherwell. These are household names when you think of the 20th
and
century.
Imagine having them in your house.
Yes, that is impressive. I mean,
well, when we come back, we're going to wrap up For the Record. We'll be right back. Our thanks to Russell Penchenko and Katie Vaughn for joining me this morning. A reminder that there's a community open house happening today, October 23rd, starting at noon at the Chazen Museum. For more information, you can check out www.chazen.wis.edu. Next week, Neil will be back. His guest will be interim UW Chancellor David Ward. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.